This is Tom Eckman.
And this is Charlie Grist.
How to count them is tricky because you really have to look at the whole market, not just the program participants or the program niche. And that's a different kind of research than we have been doing in the electric efficiency business over the last 20 years. It's more like the kind of research that Procter & Gamble and Google and big data folks do. What is the whole market doing? So that is challenging. We need to be careful that we do it thoughtfully and we get the right kinds of people doing that kind of research, because it is not a simple task, right? And it really, I think, requires taking apart each one of these markets, which is different. Our decisions on what kind of lighting to install in buildings is made by a certain set of contractors and specifiers and commercial real estate brokers and tenants. And that's a completely different market than how a refrigerator gets purchased or how a decision to insulate a house gets made. They're just different markets, and so we have to be careful about kind of understanding how those markets work so that we can measure what overall market trends are happening. So that's one big thing to be cautious about.
I think on the reception side, particularly because more recently there have been some fairly large non-programmatic results, that is, particularly in commercial lighting, we've seen a significant amount of activity taking place outside of programs. And you have to be careful not to separate that impact from what the programs have historically provided in order to get there. And so there's a real hazard in calling them non-programmatic, and as a result we don't need to target every program at energy efficiency because it's all happening non-programmatically. You have to remember there's a long history of investing in energy efficiency, and my story about building the transit system that the electric utility bought the bus, hired the driver, put up all the stops, and what we're now doing is filling the bus with gas. That's what the non-programmatic guys are doing. They are writing on all the transit system that the utility system built. We invented compact fluorescent light bulbs. We invented high efficiency ballast. We invented high efficiency linear fluorescence. Those would not be available to the marketplace at the scale or price that they're available today if it hadn't been for prior utility programs. So calling them non-programmatic has a hazard associated with it in that people who look at this and say, well, now we don't need to invest because it's all happening without us. It's only happening because of us. And we have to be careful not to assume and convey that this activity is going on independent of utility programs, because if we stop utility programs, that too will stop. That momentum will dry up, and we have to be real careful to convey that information to the decision makers that set budgets and target activities. It's not just that these are married together. What we're doing in utility programs is part of the ecosystem to make the market move, and without that, the ecosystem starts falling apart.
But that said, I do think we have to be careful not to double count savings. I mean, we're counting program savings, we're counting NEA's net market transformation, we're counting savings from federal codes and or federal standards and from state building codes. Well, even those two overlap somewhat. So we have to be careful not to double count savings when we're adding totals up, which is why it's important to look at the whole market periodically, both in terms of what's in the market and what's going into the market. The penetration of, or the annual sales data for what kinds of refrigerators or light bulbs people are buying. So getting that sort of near-term sales data is going to be more and more important as we go into the future. What choices are really being made in the marketplace.